right, let's bring in CTV's Colton Praill with more this morning. Colton, good morning to you. So this was a crucial confidence vote for the government. It passed just by a squeak. Talk to us about the final breakdown of the votes cast and the surprises that we saw last night.
Yeah, Marcia, 170 yeas, 168 nays. This was something that largely was expected to pass and pass in the manner that it did, which was that the opposition parties would blink before the Liberals. They felt they were the most ready for the election. They felt like opposition parties did not want to go to an election. They knew Canadians certainly didn't want to go to an election. And what you saw in those comments from Don Davies is exactly that, the acknowledgement that that party is not ready for an election, that they did not want to get that far, and that they did what they felt was necessary to avoid it, while also trying to signal that they opposed the actual content of the budget. And it's important to point out that we saw abstentions both on the Conservative side and on the NDP side. 2 MPs from both in each case. And what's interesting is the rationale. I think the surprise was that there was a second conservative abstention. Excuse me. Shannon Stubbs was the name that perhaps some people weren't expecting to see. Now it's important to note that in a statement from her office, they say she is on bed rest after chin and jaw surgery, and so was unable to vote virtually using the app. But also important to highlight here is that we didn't see Matt Genereux vote in this. That he was the one that we were talking about yesterday, whether or not he would. He abstained from the last 2 confidence votes. He's quitting the party and politics in the spring. The big question was what he was going to do, and of course he did not show up. He did not vote in this decision, and so it leaves a little less pressure on the NDP as being the sole party that allowed this to get through. You saw Elizabeth May, make that last-hour decision to vote in favor of the budget that really reduced the pressure on these opposition parties to be the one seen to be fully supportive of government. But that said, you still did see abstentions on both sides of opposition parties, the Bloc being the only exception. And the one thing that we should point out is those abstentions weren't all entirely due to wanting to avoid an election. Lori Idlew, the Nunavut NDP MP, specifically said she abstained because she felt she could not vote against a budget that was beneficial for her riding. Nunavut MP, in this budget, there's $1 billion for Arctic infrastructure. There's also a commitment to fund an Inuit university, the first Inuit university. And so that abstention is very much based on the contents of the actual bill that was being put forward rather than just a political decision to avoid an election.
So, Colton, where do we go from here now? What are you hearing from the Prime Minister and the Liberal government?
Yeah, the big question, the big picture really is that nothing changes, right? We're still in a minority situation. In fact, the government could fall today because there is a Ways and Means motion that is also a confidence motion directly related to implementing parts of this budget. That vote's happening just after 3 o'clock. Obviously, after all of the drama that we saw yesterday and the decisions from opposition parties to try and avoid an election, it's incredibly unlikely that they would reverse course in 24 hours and plunge us into a vote. But it is possible, and that just highlights that these things will continue to occur. This is a challenge that is not going away for the Liberal government. And you heard Elizabeth May and the NDP both say yesterday, like, this is not forever. This is a one-time decision, and it's going to take work and commitments from this government on meeting them in the middle in order to garner more support in the future. And this is just how minority parliaments work. What we really saw here is Mark Carney and the Liberal governments taking advantage of a situation where they felt they were best positioned, where they felt they were strongest, and that they didn't need to negotiate because those other parties would blink first. That won't always be the case, though. There will be shifts in polling and in Canadians' priorities. Affordability issues certainly aren't going anywhere, and so this will present a challenge for them in the future if they continue to be, you could call it obstinate even, in how they approach these kind of negotiations. It's not forever that they'll be able to govern as if they have a majority in these minority situations. For the opposition parties, the big question is really what went on with the Conservatives? Because at the end of the voting process, there's the in-house vote, and there's also the virtual vote. You saw their caucus chair and their government house leader, the opposition house leader, I should say, so that's MP Scott Reid and MP Andrew Scheer, both come in and say they were unable to vote virtually despite being in the House of Commons. Have a listen to what they said in the House, and then reaction from a former Conservative cabinet minister about how that played out.
Do we have the sound?
Mr. Speaker, I was unable to use my app. I would like to vote no.
I had technical difficulty. I would like to vote no.
I found it interesting that both Scott Reed, who is caucus chair, and Andrew Scheer, who is our House leader, had to register their votes afterwards because they both had problems in their apps, which is interesting because they were both in the House as well. So one could possibly surmise that maybe they were waiting to see which way the vote was going to go themselves before they decided if they were going to abstain or if they were going to vote against it.
And so, Marcia, this presents a bit of a line of questioning against the opposition, or for reporters to ask Pierre Poilievre about his team. You know, if they were so opposed to this budget, were they prepared to abstain in order to avoid an election? I think that's some of the fallout you're going to see in the aftermath of this decision, certainly.
Indeed. Colton Praill for us. Colton, thank you for starting us off as we look live to Ottawa.